So we're talking about this Temple Grandin book, Animals Make Us Human. This is the second installment of talking about that book. And we left off on disc 3, where she's talking about aggression and how you can test for aggression in animals, with like dogs with it's a urine analysis, and the same test can be done on people. And recently on the CBC they've been talking about, what is 1 million more people in Calgary going to look like, because they plan on importing 1 million more people to Calgary. And well, one thing, there's not enough food for all of the humans in the world today. Not enough actual nutritious food for everyone. The soils have been depleted of minerals, and there's just way too many people.
The world is overpopulated. It was overpopulated when I was a kid.
If you're an environmentalist,
when it was 3 billion people. It's almost 8 billion now.
If you're an environmentalist, you're not a fan of monocultures. Monocultures are a bad thing. If you're growing monocultures, you have to worry about insects wiping everything out. It's terrible. It's really not a way to go. And it's not good with plants. It's not good with animals. It's not good to have. And we're growing a world that's a monoculture of humans. Do you want to eat humans or human excrement? Like, what is the end goal? What are you going for when we're building a society? And they're saying, we need to import more people so that we have a workforce. Well, they've just killed off a bunch of the elderly people with COVID, and who knows how many they're going to keep killing off with COVID. So is that the reason why we're importing more young people? I mean, and there's so many different things. When I hear environmentalists talk and they don't talk about population control, they're not an environmentalist. They're a yellow politician. They're an environmental politician. They are not an environmentalist.
No.
Population.
You see, like what we can do is we can get zero carbon and we'll still be losing habitat. How? Overpopulation. So this is just a stopgap measure, like zero carbon and all that sort of stuff. Zero carbon. It's just a stopgap measure. It's not handling the long-term problem, which is overpopulation.
Angel's gonna watch my my papers for me while I put Elvis inside, because Elvis, come here, baby. This is Elvis. He's very handsome, very healthy little boy, but he's also very chatty.
Yeah, it's too chatty.
Too chatty. All right. So anyway, we were talking about the aggression that can be tested. Well, if you have, like, agriculture people, she goes on here talking about bullying and stuff like that. Well, for agriculture, you don't want aggressive animals as a part of your herd. That's not going to work out very well. So selectively, we've been breeding societies of livestock that are less aggressive, because why would we want aggressive animals in them? It's just going to cause trouble. And basically, animals are kept like they're crowded too close together, livestock animals, and it wouldn't work out to have aggressive animals as a part, because that's not a natural. They're not kept naturally. They wouldn't naturally be so tightly confined.
They would literally die without antibiotics.
Yeah.
The way they're confined. If they were done that in the so-called natural state, they were confined that closely together, they'd just die off.
Yeah. And so that we're dealing with problems like that more with humans, because there's too many of us, and we're having to go hardcore into vaccination and use a lot of antibiotics, and we're running out of antibiotics. They're using too much for raising animals for food.
That's where the main problem is.
That's where the main
So
problem
we've got
is.
places like Russia where they eat it like candy
Humans.
without a prescription.
But the main problem globally is livestock production and antibiotic use with livestock production. So, and that's overpopulation. People don't want to give up eating meat for the most part, so
give it up now. But yeah,
just eat less. Eat less of it, please, because there's too many humans, and then they're breeding too much, so there's more and more humans, and the more aggressive they are, the more meat they want to eat, and the
Not
more they don't want their reproductive rights stomped on, and who does,
Your rights are one kid per person.
That's all you have a right to. Replace yourself with one person.
A couple, two kids.
A couple, like I would prefer to see couples together. I personally believe that if a person decides to have a child, then there needs to be two parents that decide that, and they're there for the whole life of that child. It's not, oh well, once you're 16 years old I can legally boot you out. No,
I don't think much of parents that go around saying in front of their kids, I can hardly wait until they're out the door. And I've heard that at least once.
I mean, make a decision. If you want to have a child, make sure that, it has to be you giving, not you taking. That's not the relationship that needs to be there. It's about raising a child to be a strong individual, and I don't mean strong aggressive. Please,
not a yellow or a red, but someone who's a green who can actually work to support themselves. Usually greens support other people too. It's appalling how they get exploited by the reds and yellows.
But anyway, so I've been talking about the Myers-Briggs, the yellows and the reds, and the greens and the blues, and aggressive people, and you can test for aggression in humans. And I don't know if the Myers-Briggs thing works out to be like, those are aggressive personality types, but I don't know if they're genetically aggressive, or if it's, there's the whole nature versus nurture thing. But we're too tightly confined. Calgary, one of the issues, this was when I was back in university, and this, it was a while ago.
It was about 10 years ago.
So this was the major issue that a lot of the, soils people and whatever would talk about was Calgary, and how that's the bread maker.
Oh, there we go. The camera's getting ready to blow up because they were monitoring us from Calgary. We're bad mouthing Calgary.
No, I'm really not.
No.
I could, but I'm not. And
Calgary's a fine location, and I'm sure there's a lot of fine people there.
Yeah, I know of some good people there.
They're
but
just not on the Deerfoot Drive. Well, what is it?
Anyway, no. What I was going to talk about was land, and how there's not enough food. There's not enough. We don't actually, in Canada, we don't have a lot of arable land. It's pretty cold a lot of the time, and not a lot of the land can be used for agriculture. When you look at a map of Canada, and you're like, wow, there must have...
It's bigger than the United States.
But no, it doesn't work out that way.
They can only support about a tenth of the population.
Yeah. So farmers are, they're businessmen. They want to make as much money off the land as they can, and so they try to... Anyway, theoretically, it should be as productive as possible. I don't think it is, because I have some other things I'll talk about, but at the same time, you have to look at where things are going with fossil fuel usage and stuff like that, and we may need to be closer to our food production just so that we can get what we need. So thinking of that, you might really, really think about moving to the country. Because, anyway, that's another issue. The Calgary issue is university. We were talking about how there's Calgary, it keeps growing out instead of up, and it needs to be growing up, and rather than out.
It needs to stop growing,
Well, it needs to
but
stop
if
growing.
it's going to grow.
But yeah, it can't be growing out because that's some prime agriculture land under Calgary. Well, what do? It's not being used for agriculture anymore. It's being paved, and it's disgusting.
Turned into
to think
desert,
about.
artificial
Yeah.
desert.
So.
Now people could grow stuff on their rooftops, have flat roofs, but.
Yeah, but anyway, so they keep growing out, and so they're thinking, well, what will 1 million more people? Well, I'll tell you, because they're growing out, because they're talking about how, we didn't know, people want multifamily housing and they don't want to live in condos. And it's like, well, suck it up. If you want to live in the city, you better be growing up, not out. You don't get to have your nice little postage stamp yard and flowers.
Well, it's increasingly smaller yards and bigger houses and more
like
driveways. What was that?
Looks like a shanty town. You're driving by these subdivisions.
It's disgusting,
terrible.
these new subdivisions. Oh, it's awful.
Anyway.
Just disgusting. All gray and brown. All the houses have got to be the same color code and stuff like that. You drive in front of them and all you see is a driveway and garage. Wow, am I impressed.
So,
you got a 3-car garage or 2-car garage.
So they're talking about more and more people moving in and whatever. And if passive people are immigrating, then I like passive people. I like being around passive people. More aggressive people, I don't want that. And the passive people are the ones who are doing the work. Plain and simple. The yellows and the reds out there, no. They're exploiting other people. So, if you want the work to be done, if you want to be able to exploit somebody who's going to do your work, you want passive people. So if you're an aggressive politician, and if you're a politician, you are.
You're either yellow or red or a combination.
So you're thinking, aggressive people. Yeah, we're number one. We're we have the right to eat big fat steaks and whatever we want because we are powerful.
Drive around big fat gas guzzling cars.
If you want to keep doing that, import passive people, not aggressive people. Who's going to do the work for you? Who's going to give you that big fat steak?
Yeah, they'll just be fighting you, you stupid morons.
So anyway.
Oxymorons.
So you might want to do some urine tests on people before you shuffle them through into immigration and give them build a nice big house and surround the native people there with more people in Calgary. I mean, it's ridiculous that they were talking about some I don't know. I guess he was a patrol person or what would he be? Some sort of enforcement on the reserve.
Okay.
Was talking about people trespassing onto the land.
Oh, it's awful there.
Right?
The Tsutina Reserve to the southwest of Calgary is less and less to the southwest, and more just being swallowed by it. And they're talking. What were they talking about? Bragg Creek, which is off to the southwest of the reserve. They were talking about it was going to be a great development. It's going to be awesome. Oh man, it'll just be surrounded. It'll be like Central Park or something like that. The Tsutina Reserve, only bigger, and you'll have these awful skunks having bush parties there and stuff like that. it looks as though it's wonderful territory. When I lived in Calgary when I was a kid for 3 years, I'd see this on the map. I had no realization how lush it was out there until we drove by there quite recently.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's awful. You know, it's awful.
So
Calgary
that's not fair to
surrounded
them.
like just surrounded by pollution. You can imagine the pollution will get into the streams going through there.
Yeah.
You know, from more and more idiots settling upstream, settler colonial types and stuff like that. And to call whites settler colonial, that's ridiculous. Because historically it was that way, but what's happening now is, for example, the Lower Mainland, there's all sorts of people, all sorts of colors, but particularly from South Asia and from Eastern Asia, that are just taking over land, more and more and more. And hey, there are kind of like reserves there, scattered around. Look on a map. I'm not making it up. And they're just getting surrounded by city. And it's people from all over the world that are settler colonizing. It's not just whiteys. Now, whiteys are doing it here and stuff like that, but the real crush in places like the Lower Mainland is coming from elsewhere. You know, it's the people here, white people here, have basically got zero population growth, and that's what it should be. It actually, for the whole world, it should be population should be going down.
Yeah.
Not precipitously. It shouldn't be like one person per family the way it was in China before.
No, if you have it one person per person, then not everyone's going to choose to have a child.
And I don't care who's doing it, what color people are doing it. If they're Hutterites, they should have only 2 per family, 2 kids per family. If the Hutterites don't like it, they can go elsewhere. And same thing with Mennonites, same thing with Mormons and stuff like that. 2 per family. I don't care if they're white or what sort of color, black, what sort of religious persuasion. That's all. That's all she wrote, folks.
So, talking about the going back to dog food again. Boy, I'm having a hard time staying on track, aren't I?
Well, there's so
much to talk about.
We've been offline for so long.
Yeah.
We've been responsible.
Yeah.
You know, we don't have internet available here, and so we were going to a university computer lab, and there was hardly anyone in there, but we just thought, hey, you know, for ourselves and for others,
for other people,
potentially everyone around the world, we'd have to pull the plug. And we knew what would happen. We knew Alberta just kept on not locking down. Why did they use lockdown? You see,
it's not happening.
Anyway. They don't. And that's the amazing thing. We're locking down. They don't do it, but you see, they use something that you use for prisons.
Yeah.
The prison's getting locked down because there's a rebellion.
The only people who lock down are the passive people because they do what they're told. Especially the Greens. It's like, okay, you Greens, go home and don't come out because we got to get this COVID level down. So they're doing it.
And see,
but
the blue
the
people
yellows
do
and the
it
reds
because
are
they
flying around the country, flying to other countries, wherever they want, and not isolating when they get home.
And the blue people actually do it because they figured it out that you don't do it.
Yeah,
you see what I'm saying?
Exactly.
The Greens do it because
so
they
only people who are
reds
isolating
and yellows,
are
they gotta spread that COVID
Greens
around.
and the blues.
They're, the yellows, they just want to hug people, They're the kind of people that when they got kids, they neglect the kids except in front of people. Look at how I hug them. I love my kids. And then when there's not an audience there, they will say, I love my kids. I can hardly wait till they get to be 18 and get out of the house. Yeah. What the kids are getting is an oxymoron out of that.
I didn't exactly want to talk about Myers-Briggs, but what I wanted to talk about is the food situation. So, we're going to have less food the more people that we bring into Canada because people are going to have a house and they're going to... Anyway.
It'll be like Niagara Peninsula, prime settling land, but it's also prime fruit growing land. Or the Lower Mainland in BC. It's wonderful territory for growing fruit. I picked raspberries there 3 years in a row. Down there, you can grow pretty well anything there with the limitations based on the climate, but their limitations aren't nearly what they are here. So you can grow anything there, but you can't grow cities at the same time you're growing stuff.
Maybe people should, rather than getting to immigrate as citizens of Canada, they should have a work visa instead, or something like that, and they get to live here as long as they work, and they get all the health care and education for their children, all the benefits that we have as citizens, but they don't get citizenship. They get to work.
No, that's not working out. The anchor children thing, that's not working out. You got people sneaking in.
But I'm talking about the food. We'll talk about that later at another time. So anyway, this was maybe 15 years ago or something. I was talking to a woman. We go to buy corn at Safeway, I think it was. Anyway, it was a grocery store. Doesn't matter. So we both show up at the corn bin, and she said, "This corn isn't fit for pigs." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's some terrible corn, And I'm thinking, why did they even bother putting a sale on corn? Because this is really awful corn, And neither one of us wanted the corn ones. But I didn't know this woman; she didn't know me. But that corn was terrible. Anyway, and I was reminded at that point of about 15 years before then, when my ex had told me a story about how his mother had dated a man from Jamaica, and I guess she was trying to impress him, and she had avocados around and stuff like that. And he said, "This isn't even fit for pigs. We wouldn't give this avocado to pigs," or whatever. And I guess they were a lot bigger. And anyway. And but that's the way it happens. You look at the food of today and what you're getting, that's what the livestock would have been getting, 15 years before or whatever. And you're like, God, how do they keep... A lot of the time it happens that way. And so... Pork and Poultry Digest. Do you want that? Do you want to be eating that 15 years from now? Right now, it's in dog food. I was shocked that it was in dog food. And, to give it a nice yellow name, right? Yellow's like rebranding things.
Yeah. It doesn't matter
change
if it's
what it is. Pork and Poultry Digest, you know what that is. And, but I guess it sounds a little better if you call it that. And maybe it won't gross you out that you're paying. I mean, even if it's cheap for a bag of that dog food, do you really want to be paying that much for Pork and Poultry Digest? And do you want that in your grocery stores with your other food? I mean, or do you want to store it? Where are you going to store that, right? You going to store it in your kitchen with your other food? Yuck. Anyway, so it's a concern. It's aggressive. You don't want more aggressive people moving in anyway, because they're not going to do the work. And if they don't have the education level, if they're aggressive and they don't have the education level, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, we just need to educate." A lot of people don't want to be educated. They actually push that away. They don't value that. You can't educate somebody who doesn't want to be educated. So if you're not trainable and you're aggressive, you got a pit bull. That's what you got. So do you want to be importing pit bulls? Be careful about who you're importing. I am all for passive people immigrating into Canada. I'm a passive personality type. You're a passive.
Yeah, it's got it. We can only handle so much population.
It's got to go down. The world's population has to go down.
Anyone who's involved with gang activity, none whatsoever. I don't know where they come. I don't care where they come from. If they come from Russia and they're as white as can be, as white as Opie here, I don't
And
want to.
well, when people immigrate, they should actually agree that they will only have one child per person.
Oh, and
It
and
needs to happen.
it's got to be enforced.
And
In
it
other
should
words,
be for
yeah,
everybody.
yeah.
It shouldn't just be for the people who immigrate, but
It should
for the
be
people
for
for immigrate, you gotta agree to that,
You
because the
gotta
world's
agree.
population.
Sign something, and it's if you have more then you're gone back to where you come from. You
Yeah.
can keep your family
So,
and go back to where you
They
came
were
from.
talking on the CBC about, oh, well, we have to limit how many dogs or how many pets people have per household and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, you're going to limit pets now, but you're not limiting people. Like, if you limit the human, how many humans you have per family, then surely that the human isn't going to have that many pets or whatever. Even if they're a rescue person. But I think that's all I'm going to talk about for now. And I definitely recommend Animals Make Us Human by Temple Grandin. And if you're going to get a dog food bag, that signature trout and salmon, the dogs love it, and the bag seems to be biodegrading really effectively. So it's not going to hold up in the world forever. But I definitely recommend you make your own. Make your own dog food.
Opie says bye. See?